Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Barouch, I hope I pronounced that okay. If you don't know who he is, he first started a company called Fast Flowers at a very young age, I believe. Sold that, and now he's moved into the world, I guess, of social media in a way. He's now producing an app called Roams in our backyard, Surrey Hills. So I'll just introduce him to the stage. Just give a warm round of applause to Sean.
I can speak softly and you can speak loudly then.
No worries.
Cool.
Well, I guess we'll just get straight into it.
Sure. It's been intimidating, so I'm the first speaker. I had a look at the guests in Silicon Valley, and you've had like MG Ziegler and you've had Dave McClure and a bunch of luminaries. So
you've got a pretty good...
they're tough acts to follow.
No, it's not tough acts, but I think you're in good hands, I guess, you know.
Cool, you have to be kind.
Yeah, we'll be kind. Everyone will be kind to you, I guess. Okay, let's just start from the start, I guess. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you...
The start? When my mother met my father.
When your mother met your father.
It was a warm night, summer's night, yeah. So my kind of entrepreneurial, I suppose, journey started with my late grandfather. He started one of the first large manufacturing companies in Australia. It was a big furniture manufacturing company called Fairline Furniture that created all the furniture that was kind of in Harvey Norman, and I think it was, before it was Grace Brothers, there was another name, and sort of was a fairly large business with several thousand people. So I used to go with my grandfather, and I kind of just knew from a very early age that I enjoyed sort of entrepreneurial activity or building businesses kind of was what I wanted to do. So I kind of kept that through high school in the back of my head, that I was always kind of looking for opportunities. I used to annoy my dad, like as a 12-year-old, I'd be waiting in a queue and I'd sort of be asking him, why do they do it that way? Or like, wouldn't it be better if they did that? And like, eventually just say, look, most of the time we're supportive, and eventually it was just like, please just be quiet. So when I was 17, I tried to buy a bunch of flowers for a girl that I fancied. And for the men in the audience, if you remember, like when you're sort of 17, it's a pretty awkward experience trying to ask a girl out. Back in the days I had sort of pretty baggy jeans and Kappa jeans, and was trying to be cool and had my probably baseball cap backwards. And walking into a flower shop to hand over $50 to try and get a bunch of flowers delivered was a pretty awful experience. And then you wouldn't know what to order. You'd kind of give them your money. Yeah. Like I couldn't get out of that shop fast enough. I don't even know if they...
hope it was the right choice as well.
Yeah, I hope it was the right choice. I don't even know if they got delivered. There was kind of like no tracking. This was 99. Yeah. I didn't end up getting the date. Yeah. I am married with 2 kids now, so I tend not to tell this story too often, so I don't annoy my wife. But after that process, I was like, there's got to be a better way to fulfill that need. Like, there's a buyer. There has to be a way they can get educated, they can transact, and they can get it delivered. So from that, I came up with the idea to build a company called Fast Flowers. I saw there were some successful businesses in the US that were toying with e-commerce in '99, that created experiences that allowed people to see what they were ordering, track the order, have it delivered. And there was no one really doing it in Australia. So we launched at the end of '99, at about the same time that Roses Only, which was a bricks and mortar business, went online. Right. And kind of grew that business.
So this is like, just in the early days of e-commerce, if you think, and you started this in Australia.
Yeah, there was no e-commerce in Australia. Like, we had to build our own payments gateway that interfaced with a bank. Like, I was 17, so the bank wouldn't even give me a license, and I won't tell you which bank it was. But like, I couldn't get a credit card, I couldn't get a merchant facility. They made it really hard. So like, I had to go in to the bank with my dad to try and sign up, and we went from bank to bank to bank, to finally somebody stupid accepted it. And well, they weren't stupid, because we ended up with St George, and we gave them a lot of business over 11 years. But yeah, we had to build everything from scratch, and there were no books. Like, there wasn't internet e-commerce for dummies like back then. That sort of came out a few years later. My CTO bought it for me on his first day, which was I was very grateful to Michael for that. But there was no kind of common knowledge on how to build these things, so we made heaps of mistakes, spent heaps of money, and finally got the formula right.
Okay, so did you have sort of a background in programming? Did you know how to get started and do it on your own, like leeway to start with?
Not really. Like as a kid, like I played with Commodore 64. My dad taught me to code in BASIC, but like really nothing that was commercial.
Yeah.
I suppose I came at it from the point of view of a consumer. Like, what does a consumer want to get out of it? And I hired the right contractors and the right people who could kind of bring it to life. That was a challenge in itself because you put a job ad out for somebody who's built an e-commerce website. You don't get many responses in '99 because no one had kind of done it before. So that was a challenge.
Yeah. So how was the overall success of that business then, and what led it to obviously you to sell that?
Yeah, look, I started that in '99, and we built that up over about 10 years. We had several 100,000 customers. We had shops in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and partner stores in New Zealand.
These are physical stores?
Physical stores, as well as the web store, which had pretty significant volume.
Yep.
We were the local partner for a very large US-based e-commerce company called Pro Flowers. So we had a pretty decent business. We did flowers for Westpac and Qantas and Telstra. And ultimately I kind of got to a point where we started to get some offers from people sort of saying, hey, we're interested. And it was originally sort of kicking some tyres. And then there was a few people who were actually serious. And I was like, well, look, I've done this for 10 years now. I felt like I've taken the business to where I can actually take it to without going overseas and in foreign markets. There were some very, very good competitors.
Yeah.
And Jack Singleton approached me, John Singleton's son, who put together a consortia of business people who were buying up assets in the space.
Right.
And it was really amicable. Like, he said, look, how much do you want? And I said, well, this much. And he said, well, this is what I'm prepared to pay. And we kind of ended up in the middle and literally shook hands and did a deal in a couple of weeks. It was pretty amazing.
So that was at a pretty young age, I guess. So
that was 2 years ago, so I was 28. So yeah, I'd never exited a business before, so that in itself was a pretty interesting experience.
Yeah. So would you say that experience working, setting up a business at a young age, and then selling it, I guess at a tidy sum, sort of set you up for what you, I guess, began in Rome's?
Oh, completely. All of the mistakes that I've made, hopefully I don't make too many of them again. And all the things that I've learned, I can leverage in.
What are some of those mistakes though?
Some of the technology choices that we made, some hiring decisions, some strategy decisions. You make lots of mistakes, even like little things on a daily basis. And you go, God, I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
But equally, you also learn a lot of things. Like for me, I didn't appreciate the value of my network. So, I'm naturally quite sociable and I go out and I go to a lot of events and I would meet people and chat. And after 10 years, you kind of realise, wow, that's actually quite a lot of people that I've formed a relationship who are interested in kind of what I'm doing. We've got a good dialogue. And you kind of don't appreciate the value of that network until you kind of next need it. So now, when I started Rome's and I started talking to people about what we're doing, suddenly I was like, oh wow, I can actually get to quite a lot of people who are actually engaged and interested in this business.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it was a pretty, an amicable exit, but I guess time to move on.
Yeah, it was time to move on. I was looking for the next challenge. In '99, e-commerce was cutting edge. In 2010, it was already, it was sort of traditional. It doesn't feel that way with sort of Jerry Harvey and some of the big retailers, but e-commerce wasn't like bleeding edge anymore. And so, I was looking at friends who were in the mobile space in the US, who were doing some cool things. I was like, that's kind of where I want to be.
Okay, cool. So how do you go from, say, an online business, an e-commerce site, to, iOS, location-based application,
Stupid, huh?
No.
Stick to what you know. I don't know, I kind of saw an opportunity in the market. Like, it wasn't so much mentally I went, oh, well, I'm doing e-commerce and now I'm doing iOS or doing Android. I, as a consumer, woke up like every Saturday morning with my wife and like, what do we do with our son? Like, where do we go?
Yeah.
That information's got to be out there, but I'm not getting it from the web. I'm not getting it from social media. I'm not getting it from radio or television. Like, how do I solve that problem? Like, what are cool restaurants nearby? What are activities that are going on? What are things that are happening in my local area? So from that, I was like, well, where does that content reside? Like, clearly people are talking about this stuff, but how? Are they doing it on the telephone? Are they doing it on fax? Are they doing it by email? And like, the obvious thing that I kept on seeing was people were doing it on social media. You're Instagramming a photo at the Kite Festival at Bondi, you're tweeting about the food that you've just eaten at the Japanese, you're checking in on Foursquare, the new bar that's just opened in Surrey Hills. So sort of what I saw was that there was all this really interesting, rich social content, but in the blink of an eye it was already gone, because if you're following somebody and you refresh, it's off your stream. If you're not following that person, you'd never even see it. So, you could be a block away from Bondi Beach when the kite festival was on, but just never hear about it. So I kind of wanted to solve that big data problem, that there was really interesting data. How do we get that content to the right person at the right time? So it wasn't based on platform, whether it was web or iPhone or Android, and we still don't think of as a business, or hey, we're an iPhone app. We're like a location platform that's built some really interesting technology, and how we get that data to the end user is sort of a strategic choice. We started by doing it on iPhone, then Android. Equally, we could have a pretty cool tablet experience or a web experience.
Okay, so for those of us that don't know iOS programming, I guess,
Yeah.
Is that a bit of a technical challenge, pulling data from different social networks, aggregating and then providing something meaningful for those of us, that just
it's not an iOS challenge. It's a engineering challenge. I probably should start to explain to the audience what Roams actually is. So Roams it's an iPhone application. You can also get it for Android, that aggregates social content. So we show you what's happening in your local area. You can all reach for your phone and download it. It's free. And then I'll make my target with the board this month, because there's about 50 people in the room. And so what you can do is you fire it up. It uses the GPS on your phone. It listens to social in the area. It looks at content that's relevant, and it shows you things that are happening in the local area. So before I just walked in, there was stuff happening down at Luna Park. There's a few cafes in the area where people were taking photos. So that was kind of version 1. And what we launched about 3 or 4 weeks ago was a really nice search layer on top of that social data. So you punch in, parks, and we'll surface all the conversations in the local area about parks. Or you'll punch in Luna Park, and you'll see what people have shared on social at Luna Park. Or as a journalist asked me this morning, you punch in riot, and you literally see some photos from the riots that were happening on social at Hyde Park on the weekend. So it's kind of repurposing existing data in a really interesting way. So that's a consumer proposition. The business proposition, the way we'll make money, is we're surfacing some of that data and analytics for businesses. So if you're a small business or a brand and you want to see what people are saying in your local store, you can use it as a tool to analyse that, to see it, to push out messages to people in a local audience, and to sort of generate demand. And because the data we're pulling in is global, the application's global. So we've got kind of more users outside of Australia than we do in Australia.
So are you working with, say, suppliers to sort of generate revenue sort of stream?
Yeah, starting to. So we're doing a bunch of pilots now with Dimix, with Threadbow. We did some stuff with The Voice on Channel 9. So we're just sort of working out the commercial strategy. We've had some pretty decent success.
Yep.
Now we're starting to talk to sort of larger commercial companies who've got a bunch of outlets or retail or products at a lot of locations. How do we sort of bring their products and services to life?
Okay, I see. Okay.
I forgot what was the original question. I hijacked that a bit like a politician.
You gave us a better answer. That's a natural way of answering a question.
Cool.
With another sort of.
Yeah, it's a Julia Gillard kind of approach.
Pretty much. I recently read an article, well, it's probably not so recent anymore, a couple of months ago, read an article you wrote on TechCrunch, or contributed to TechCrunch, titled Serendipity Isn't a Use Case Anymore. Do you want to sort of elaborate on that, but also answer the question, is it possible for technology to sort of, give us these serendipitous experiences? Should technology do this for us?
I hope so, because that's kind of the premise of what we've built. So if not, I'm kind of out of a job, and all my lovely colleagues are as well. So I hope very much that we can. I suppose that piece was written about, it was almost like a post-mortem on the first version of our application, because it did reasonably well and people were using it. But originally when I pitched the idea of Roams, I had in my head that I'd be walking out of my house on a Saturday morning searching for serendipity. And the reality was you kind of don't just walk outside hoping that serendipity hits you on the head, it just kind of happens. What you do find, did I say
I think
something?
the lights are going down.
That's all right, it'll be a very intimate setting.
Just by the outside by the bins.
But like on a Saturday morning I will leave with my son looking for a park, or I will leave looking for something to eat or for a coffee. So that was a learning for us. That was something that we didn't expect. So what we've done in the second version is sort of looked at the way that people were using the application, which was to search for stuff. We've given that to them so they can actually use our product the way that human behaviour sort of dictates. But at the same time, we're thinking of other ways of how we can bake serendipity into the product. So I'll give you an example. So, you know, you can be looking for coffee, you can type in coffee, you can see the cafe, that was the intent on a Saturday morning, you go to the coffee shop. But on the way to the coffee shop, we might see 3 of your friends are down at Bondi talking about the Kite Festival. You know, we might ping you and say, hey Jonathan, you're just around the corner from Bondi, 3 of your friends at the Kite Festival, and we've seen that it's buzzing on social media. Like that for me is more serendipitous, and that's sort of more in the context of our product. So trying to think of other ways to surface cool things when you're not expecting it, which kind of is what serendipity is. So can you engineer it? I don't know, but can we help serendipity to happen? Probably, and that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Okay, so would you say you're sort of adding that social layer to sort of your searching, as opposed to say you're on Google, you're looking for a coffee shop, but you're not going to get that sort of experience from someone. You're not going to understand whether that's the place to go or that's the local favourite.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting space, and like I think 2 days ago Mark Zuckerberg was sort of talking about social search, so now like all over all the tech blogs, everything's talking about social search. So our strategy is to try and jump on the bandwagon and try and get everyone to discover what we're doing. But I mean, that's kind of what we've been trying to do for a year and a half. Like use some of the social data, use some of the insight around consumers, you pair that with some of the things that we know about people to surface interesting content that something like Google doesn't do very well.
Right.
And that's not to say it's a replacement for Google, but it's just a completely different experience. Because when I'm searching for a bar, if I can see that one of my friends are there right now, well, this is what people have said like 10 minutes ago, and you actually see live content, that's really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Someone said,
oh, that's good. Okay. Sweet. I'm up 1. Convince 1. 49 to go.
Yeah.
Well, 2, yes, cool.
Building the business though, like just dive back into the business side of things.
Yeah.
Like being an Australian or building a startup, a technology startup in Australia, in Sydney specific. Was that difficult at the start? Like, I mean, I know you had the experience with Fast Flowers, but you're really going for a big market. Like you probably would say your target market's in America or the world. You'd say bigger than the Australian market.
Yeah, definitely. So is it tough doing it from Australia? Yeah. Oh, completely. It's still tough. So it's a nightmare. Like I'm taking phone calls at midnight with people in the US, and I'm pretending that it's like 8 in the morning, or they're like booking in meetings and saying, oh, you must be on Pacific time, and they just in their head imagine that Sydney's on the same time as San Francisco. Right. So yeah, it is really tough. We go over there quite regularly. We email. I think the Israelis do it really, really well. And I've learned a lot from some Israeli friends. Like they've just got what's called like chutzpah, which is like they have like local US lines, they have business cards with, a friend's address on it. They go over there and crash on people's couches. Like for all intents and purposes, people think that they're just in the valley, but they're not. Like they're jumping on a plane, from Tel Aviv every couple of weeks. So they do it really, really, really well. Yeah. I think we've tried to emulate that on a much smaller scale, so that tyranny of distance is a little bit less apparent. Mm-hmm. So when we're pitching a journalist, although it's completely obvious I'm an Aussie, we don't focus on the fact that I'm based in Sydney. Right. When you're at South by Southwest and talking, like the same, it works kind of both ways. So the fact that there is a lot of distance is really tough. And as you said, the natural business partners, or maybe even ultimately an acquirer, probably resides within 100 kilometres of Silicon Valley. But what I found really interesting was that the Americans have a really, really strong bond with Australians, and I don't know when that happened. Yeah. I don't know if it's because there's so many Aussies in the Valley, or if it's just after the Olympics. But it really struck me at CES in Las Vegas in January, where you saw journalists going from pitch to pitch to pitch to pitch, and every pitch is a mobile app that's going to change the world. Every pitch is from like a 25-year-old Stanford, educated software engineer. Yeah. Like every table looks the same, every pamphlet looks the same. And so you could see these journalists progressively falling asleep as they were sort of going through the ranks. And then they got to Rome's, and I put on a really ochre Australian accent, and suddenly they perked up. Yeah. Because it's just a bit different. And
switched them on a bit.
Yeah, I did switch it on, I was saying good day and all those kinds of things, but it worked. You'd see their faces, bored, but oh, okay, something interesting.
You sure they didn't understand you?
They probably didn't understand half of it, but that didn't really matter. It was I got their business card, we were chatting. They'd either been to Australia, or their long lost cousin had been to Australia, or their dog's aunt, sister had been to Australia. There's this really close association with Australia. Yeah. And tech entrepreneurs have to milk anything that they've got that kind of makes them a little bit different to get noticed.
Yeah.
So in my case, it was putting on a crappy Australian, accent, and it worked. And we formed a lot of friendships just over some banter about, Harbour Bridge or, their long lost cousin in Melbourne. Yeah.
Going on friendships, speaking of friendships,
A lot of people know each other because it's not such a big community yet. It's funny because I've kind of now seen two cycles.
yeah.
So there was a massive boom in events like this in sort of 99, 2000, 2001. And you could see the steam coming in the, what we want to call it, boom or bubble or whatever it was. There was more and more tech events, more and more people were entrepreneurs. There was a really great vibe. There was Verve Clicquot being served at entrepreneur parties. You could see it happening in 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
Then it completely died.
Yeah.
It just fell off a cliff. And apart from a handful of people like the guys at Atlassian and 99 Designs, there was very few kind of entrepreneurial businesses for a long, long time. And anecdotally, I don't know if it's actually backed up by data, but the last sort of 12 months, it feels like it's starting again. So both, mainly here, but a little bit in Melbourne as well, you're seeing people starting businesses, you're seeing co-working spaces, you're seeing US VCs jumping on a plane, you're seeing a company, I've momentarily forgotten their name, who's just set up a VC fund locally. Blackbird Ventures, and Peter Thiel, who's come out and done stuff with that, Valor Ventures. So you're seeing kind of that scene start to re-emerge, which is really, really cool. And it helps everybody because it means there's more entrepreneurs, there's more engineers, more people stay here rather than jumping on a plane. But the reality is, as Australia, we're still pretty crappy at supporting the ecosystem. The government does a really poor job, our corporates do a really poor job, journalists do an average job, society does a really bad job of supporting them. So it's not only incumbent on government, we've all got to do a better job if we want to keep our best and brightest.
So despite those disadvantages, you wouldn't see Rome's moving anytime soon to the valley, or? I can never say never. Ultimately we would like to have an office there, and if we're successful, have some people over there. I think sort of, what 99 Designs or Atlassian have done is really clever. They've kept a footprint in Australia, they're accessing the great talent here. They've also got, offices over there in the US as well, or any market for that matter. We might ultimately not be successful in the US, but might have a great presence in Asia. So, the same thing would apply. Where do you see most of your users coming from?
Mainly the US and Australia,
Are Australians slow to catch on? Is it just that, or it's just?
I don't think so. I think Australian users are pretty tech savvy. They've all got iPhones or Android phones, and they're pretty happy to try new things. And the competition's a lot less fierce here as well. The average person on the street possibly hasn't heard of some of the hottest startups that everybody raves about in the US.
Yeah, of course. How does the new new iPhone 5 announcement and iOS 6, I guess? How does it affect? Not how does it affect, but how's Rome sort of opened up to it? How is your forward thinking, your strategic thinking moving forward?
Oh wow, strategic thinking. We're a startup. We kind of work day by day. We pushed a release this morning, which was for iOS 6 in anticipation of the iPhone 5 coming out. It's just a really lovely step in the right direction for us. It's a bigger screen, so a content-rich application like Rome's has more space to show really cool content and do cool things. The native Facebook integration is really awesome. So for those of you who've got apps, you tap Facebook, you go off to Facebook, you sign in, then you come back to an app. It's a lot of barriers for people to sign in. With iOS 6, you tap one button, it says this app wants to use Facebook, okay, done, and you're in. So it's almost like single sign-on. It's like a PayPal, but for everything else. So that's really cool. We've integrated with Apple Maps. So there's nothing for us that's massive revolution, but it's just really nice steps to make the user experience better.
Be careful on that word revolution. You probably heard Jack Dorsey mention the word revolution instead of disruption. Yeah, that's right. No, well, maybe that's why subconsciously I mentioned it. But obviously what he's doing with Square is, I'd probably say, I don't know, is it disruptive or is it revolution? It's probably a little bit of both, right? Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So moving to the sort of the startup, setting a startup side of things.
Yeah, setting one up.
I'm sure you've heard of Eric Ries and his sort of his philosophy or his book on the lean startup. How much does Rome's, or have you sort of personally sort of subscribed to that and sort of setting up your own business and applying those practices?
Look, I think it's really good to be agile and to try things and to work out what works and what doesn't work. I think the reality though is if Rome's had kind of adopted a lean philosophy, we wouldn't be here, because I think ideas inherently take a little bit of time to catch on. And you look at things like Twitter and Facebook, and they did take a few years to actually get to scale. And I think the lean philosophy is kind of, if it doesn't work straight away, you kind of kill it. So I think there's probably a happy medium between, you know, having massive funding round and putting on huge amounts of engineers, and the lean philosophy, which is really minimum viable product and out the door. Because I think you have to iterate a few times to get it right. So yeah, I mean, we run weekly sprints. We try different things. If it works, if it doesn't work, we're a pretty close team. We talk about pretty much all aspects of the product.
So do you just throw out new features and just see how the market sort of reacts to it? Or?
That's where I want to get to. So I mean, that's what we're sort of trying now. Yeah, I mean, so we had to get to a position where the product was stable. We kind of knew what users wanted. We had a platform that allowed us to innovate on top of it. We're kind of at that place now, which is really cool, because it means going forward we can innovate a lot quicker. So we've got a platform that scales, it's robust, it's built on AWS, so we can spin servers up and turn them down based on demand.
Right.
And now we are literally trying things. So as I said, you know, we're sending notifications about things that are cool nearby. You know, a bunch of us have got that already working on our phones. We had it over the weekend. You know, some parts of it worked, some didn't. So we sat down on Monday morning and said, hey, what did we like? What didn't we like? And we're tweaking it. So the guys today were tweaking it, and you know, so and sort of 10 of us are looking at it. So now that we've got a user base, we can see, you know, what the effect, project what the effect would be on the whole user base, and actually physically have something in our hands the same day and say, hey, does this actually add value or not?
Yeah. So what's the structure at Rome's like? You know, with the team, the working environment. I mean, to those of us that don't know, you know, we're based in Surrey Hills, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, are you a big team? Are you a small team?
There's 11 of us, but we're obviously always looking for amazing engineers. So that's my plug for Rome's. We've got half the team is engineers, and half is CTO, product design, marketing, community manager, myself, and we've got one person in biz dev. So it's kind of half and half.
And has that grown over time, or
we started with one and then two and then three and then kind of grew.
Yeah.
We've got a good team now. Like, we've got a really nice team who get on really well, who push good product.
Yeah.
We've got, you know, good thinking around product, good thinking around design. I think the latest version we put out, we've had pretty good reviews, like even in the US, around sort of the UI, which is really pleasing, that we're up there with, you know, being compared to some other apps that we kind of look up to in the US, which is really cool.
Can I ask which apps?
I don't want to blow, you know, toot our own horn, but like some of the really well-known apps, like parts of our app have been compared to, you know, features from our app have been integrated into other popular apps as well. So, you know, what do they say? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. So it's nice, like we're up there in terms of our design and some of our UI.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of really pleasing for us, and it's been recognised. You know, today CNET called us out as the app of the day, and we've had some really amazing press.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great to hear then. Recently, whilst Adam and myself were over in New York, we went to. Has anyone heard of Skillshare?
No.
It's sort of like a. It's a meetup, but it's also sort of like a. I think the next big thing, I guess, in startups is heading down that education sort of path. So Skillshare, what Skillshare is started by a young chap called Michael. I forget his last name, but it's basically where anyone can sort of teach anyone if you've got an expertise in a particular skill. So in America, Skillshare is just taking off, and so we were lucky to go to one of the first classes, and it just so happened that the founder, Michael, was running that class, and the title of that class was hiring and creating an all-star team for a startup. And we got a lot out of that because we realised it's not just important to obviously hire the best people, but it's also the culture behind it, you know, how you sort of fit, how you sort of like develop products, you know, iterate, fail fast, you know, that sort of thing. So how would you say your hiring process is like? I mean, I know you're quite small as a team, but like, how would you say you're thinking, and you know, is it hard and significant?
It's constantly evolving and learning from mistakes, and learning from things that have worked. I mean, I think to build a good culture, you need good people. So you need people who share the vision, who actually genuinely love what they do and turn up to work every day because they're building something that's cool rather than because they have to. I think if you get that right, it's a lot easier to build a cool culture. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We look for people, you know, we had somebody apply for us for a role who built a whole website about like why they would be perfect for the role. Like that's awesome. So, you know, obviously they're the first person that we email back to come in for an interview. But yeah, it's tough. Like the market's really tight, particularly for engineers. It's competitive. You've got Google, who's got what, 300 or 400 people. You've got all the big banks and telcos who, you know, suck up engineers and suck up talent. I suppose our competitive advantage is the culture, that it's a startup. There's not that many funded startups, so anyone who's interested in the scene or wants to get involved or wants to learn about what it's like, it's kind of a nice stepping stone into sort of entrepreneurship. So I tend to get approached and pinged on LinkedIn quite a lot, which is really awesome. But yeah, I mean, there's no denying it. It's really, really bloody tough at the moment.
Have you ever sort of looked towards outsourcing particular tasks or jobs because it's just too hard in Sydney or Australia?
It's hard with what we build. I mean, particularly on the platform side, like a lot of the value of our company is based on the IP that we've built. You know, the data processing, the platform, the way that we process the data, and what, you know, the algorithms that sort of surface specific content. And that's really tough to outsource. Like you need to sit around the table and chat about it and try things and you know, change it and tweak it every day. You know, we've had some parts of the mobile application outsourced, which is tough again. So we're pretty much doing everything in-house now. Just because, I mean, that's what you want as well. I mean, the value of the company is the technology you've built and the team that you've got behind you. So, you know, if you outsource everything, you don't have either, really.
Okay, cool. So where do you sort of see Roams in a year's time, or where would you like to be in a year's time, and then maybe further down the track in 3 years' time?
I mean, for us, we just want to continue to grow so that we've got more and more users on the platform who are deriving benefit from it. And we want to have merchants on the platform who are deriving benefit, and we want to sit in between so that consumers can find out about businesses and events nearby, and businesses can talk to relevant, engaged local audiences. I suppose the vision for the company is how do we surface things in the local area that you wouldn't find out about if it wasn't for Roams. So those kind of moments that would pass in time without you ever even knowing about it. The kite festival at Bondi, the TO's bar across the road from our office, which is going off tonight, and 3 of my friends are there. So that, you know, you can download Roams once, it goes in your pocket, even if you never open it again, we can still alert you to some of those subtle moments. And maybe it's not even in mobile, maybe ultimately it's in a tablet, or it's on web, or it's email. Like we're kind of platform agnostic, but how do we pair people with places and moments in time that are sort of significant for them? Because that's really sticky. Like if we, you know, deliver you to meet your friend at the bar, if we deliver you to a festival that you would have known about, if we sort of help surface the fact that somebody's just eating sushi around the corner at a place that's just open and it's incredible, that's really powerful. And you'll keep coming back. So how do we get 1 or 2 of those moments up front to get you to sort of engage with us?
Okay, that's cool.
So that's sort of the 1 year. The 5 years, how do we become like a ubiquitous sort of location platform? So, I mean, no one's really conquered local since probably Yellow Pages. Yelp are trying, Foursquare are trying, Google are trying. I don't think there's one kind of global brand that sort of sticks out as the new location player on mobile. When you look in other industries that are being disrupted, so you look at PayPal, which is being disrupted now by Square, which is kind of the mobile equivalent.
Although they've got a bit of competition.
They've got competition as well, but you kind of see there are a whole bunch of mobile players who are trying to create, the next mobile version of their web peers. And I think if we can kind of do that for location, that's really powerful and really valuable. If we get that consumer audience and that merchant audience.
So you'd like to see yourself at the pioneer of like sort of social side?
I hope so. I think you have to aim high as an entrepreneur, otherwise you kind of feel short.
Okay, cool. So for those of us maybe starting a company in the audience, how would you say the best way to get started is in terms of like funding? So would you say let's just build a product, you know, get it out there, you know, minimal resources, or bootstrap it at the start, or you know, reach out to your networks, put out the ideas and try to get funding from the get-go? What would you say?
Oh, look, I don't think there's one hard and fast rule. Unfortunately, if there was, I'd make a fortune selling, speaking and selling books. I think it's all of the above. I think it's reaching out to your network, it's prototyping, it's drawing, it's speaking to people, it's getting validation about the product. if you can afford to do it on your own, I mean, that's always going to be the easiest. To get something off the ground with a little bit of traction, you're going to be in a far stronger position when you're negotiating than just off the back of a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So, you know, the advice I give people when they pitch me is like, if you can build something that actually works and that even delivers on a portion of the promise, that's sort of the best position to be in.
Right.
But funding is like a whole other topic for discussion. Like in Australia, again, it's really, really hard. We're not particularly a mature market in terms of angels, in terms of early stage VC. So you see a lot of people moving overseas to Singapore, to Israel, to the US, where, you know, there's a lot more competition, but there's a lot more funding opportunities as well.
So what are your thoughts though with Australian startups going over to Silicon Valley to start to chase that goal, chase that dream, and get funding before working hard in their own backyard if they need to?
I think everyone works hard, whether it's in their own backyard or if it's in Silicon Valley. But I mean, yeah, there's been a bunch who've gone over. Like, I mean, you look at sort of the guys at Kaggle, Anthony Goldblum, they were a business out of Melbourne who were building a marketplace for PhD data scientists. And people kind of laughed them off in Australia. They tried to pitch to a whole bunch of people, couldn't really get any traction with the investment community.
It is a pretty unique idea. Yeah.
It is a really unique idea. Like when they first pitched it, I didn't get it. Like I was like, I just don't get this business at all. And then when someone explained it to me, I was like, oh, okay, so it's like a 99 Designs, but for big data. Okay, cool, I get it. But even with that explanation, like nobody in Australia would touch them. Anthony moved over to Silicon Valley just to start building his network. He built it for 6 months. He was hoping to raise a couple of $1 million. The round was so oversubscribed that in their Series A they raised $11 million. So that's kind of the example of like a good idea in Australia, hard to get traction, a good idea even though much more competitive in the Valley can get you, and like Max Levchin, who is the founder of PayPal, is his chairman, like, so he's got some really heavy hitters behind him, which is amazing, like, for a young guy from Melbourne.
Of course, yeah. No, that's exactly right.
But hopefully, like, my aim would be like, why can't we do that in Australia? Like, why can't we unlock some of the super money? Why can't we unlock some federal money? Why can't we get corporates? Why can't we get angels investing in the space? Like, we just have to give them the right incentives to do it. Let them write off some of the losses up front. Let them have higher tax deductions. Let's make it really interesting for people to put small amounts of money into tech, because then you'll get entrepreneurs, then you'll get people pitching, you'll start building up the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's a big debate at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, the government's been really short-sighted. They've done a really crappy job.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully maybe now if there is a change of government, there'll be some sort of incentive to do something. Like, we're spending $50 billion on NBN, but like no one knows what it's going to do. Yeah. It's kind of a bit pointless if we've got high-speed internet but no applications to run on it. Like, it's a joke.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just before I point it over to the audience for your questions, I just want to quickly run through some quick flash questions.
Capsicum.
They're not hard. They're all easy.
Okay, cool.
Just so we can get to know you. So, what did you want to do when you, I guess, first grow up?
I wanted to be a lawyer. Isn't that amazing? Like, as a kid, I'm embarrassed to say it. Like, as an 8-year-old, I said I want to be a lawyer. Like, my 4-year-old wants to be an astronaut. Like, that's a normal thing to say.
That's a good answer, though, right?
That astronaut's a great answer. Lawyer, not such a great answer. Very glad I'm not a lawyer. Sorry, no offence. Anyone in the room is a lawyer.
I think I already answered this last one. Which entrepreneur are you constantly inspired by?
Heaps. I mean, oh God, I'll be.
If you had to
name one. Well, yeah, Richard Branson, maybe Jack Dorsey. Lots of entrepreneurs I kind of look at. I'm a pretty heavy reader of news, but I suppose people who kind of can see a little bit into the future and aren't afraid to kind of build businesses. Like the fact that Richard Branson's building a space travel company, like people are laughing at him, but they're actually making steps to make that,
I hear Jeff Bezos from Amazon's also going down that route too.
Well, he's going to build a space company?
Something like that. It's pretty stealth as well.
Amazon in space.
Yeah.
Scary.
Scary.
I do like drop shipping, yeah.
Drop shipping.
Literally drop shipping.
Some of your favourite apps that you use? Apart from Roams.
Yeah, Roams. Download it. No. Flipboard, obviously Twitter, Facebook. I'll open my phone. It's sad that I can't answer you because the first question whenever we interview somebody and they're on the spot and they can't answer is like, what are your favourite apps? But then they pull out their phone and they can kind of tell you. I've been pretty impressed by, like, to be honest, like Coles and Woolworths, like in Australia, they're actually jumping on it as well.
Yeah.
And doing some pretty innovative things. I like the Pinterest mobile app. I've got hundreds of apps. I could go all night. I think that's probably enough.
Technology world.
Yeah.
What are some of your hobbies?
I don't have any. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, all I think about is work. No, that's not really a joke. It's true. I was up last night with my 12-week-old son, and I got shit today in the office because I was answering emails at 2 a.m. Outside of work, normal. I've got friends. I sort of go to the gym. I jog. I love skiing. I'm a mad keen skier. So if I can get a trip to the US, it's tax deductible and go skiing as well. That's a nice perk if I can pull it off. But yeah, that sort of skiing is probably my top passion, I suppose, outside of technology.
Oh, that's cool. And then lastly, probably where have you seen where have been the most unique places you've seen some of the Rome's users come from?
Oh wow, like seriously all over the world.
All over the world?
Like somebody taking a photo inside a mosque in Egypt.
Yeah.
People in Alaska taking photos on the snow.
Yeah.
I'm going to give away, Aileen, one of your secrets for what you're doing this week, but we had one person on our new service, Search for Love, in New York, which we kind of thought was a unique use of Rome's. Hopefully we found love for them. But yeah, so we're putting out this infograph, I suppose, that answers that this week for the press about some of the different things that people have done with the app in the different places, and we're going to probably try and do that on a regular basis because there's some really cool things within the data that we notice. And that's kind of the power of what we've built. We're kind of seeing in real time what people are looking for, what they're doing, where they are, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's great. All right, we'll put it back to the audience now. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask Jonathan, whether it's about Rome's, whether it's about starting a business, anything really. Just might have to speak up, just so we can also pick it up on the audio. Otherwise, John can repeat the questions. All right.
With Microsoft launching quite fiercely into the mobile market, is Rome's going to be launching into the Windows mobile app marketplace?
Look, obviously as I said, we're technology agnostic. I mean, we really like iPhone and Android. If Windows Phone becomes a serious player, we'll happily look at it. I mean, how many of you guys have a Windows 7 phone in the room? No. So that kind of answers it for the moment. You've got one? Yeah, so there's one person. So that's more than any other time I've asked that question. So if that changes, we'll definitely look at it. And the thing is, it's a really cool OS. It's some really lovely things you can do with it, particularly with the tiles. It suits itself really well to something like Rome's, where we can surface content on some of those tiles, which are almost like a screensaver of the stuff that's happening in your local area. But for us, I mean, we're a startup, we've got limited people, limited resources. You kind of put your chips on the table where you think they're going to pay off. And at the moment, I think it's a little bit premature for us to put chips on the table for Windows Phone 7, or now Windows Phone 8.
I was just going to say, with your revenue model, when you actually sort of decided to take the plunge and start on Rome's, did you sort of have that clearly defined? Because I mean, it sounds like at the moment you've kind of got a bit of a work in progress with it. You're aggregating this data, and there's the potential there to sort of provide it, sell it back to businesses. Is that still very much so in development, or have you got to a point where you think you've got something that's workable? And at what point, with relation to when you actually started the business, when did you feel confident that you had something in place, or was it more that you thought, okay, well, we've got something we could build a community about and then take it from there?
Look, we were thinking about it from day one, because obviously money runs out eventually, so you have to be able to sustain yourself. It is a work in progress. It's always going to be a work in progress, as it should be. The first kind of iteration of that model is a system that allows business to monitor what's being said about them in their location, and some analytics around platforms and time of day, allow them to broadcast messages to the Rome's community, but also out to third-party communities, Facebook, Foursquare, Instagram. We've done trials on it, the partners are quite happy, so we're at a point now where we think we've got a winner. But that's not to say there's not going to be a bunch of other revenue streams. So as you said, the data, not actually selling the raw data, but selling the insight from the data. Deals and offers and loyalty and rewards and local payments. There's a whole bunch of other things that we could do once we build scale in the business. But you kind of, again, have to pick one or two things and kind of focus on it, and that's what we're focusing on for the moment, because that's what the market's telling us, and that's what some of the early partners of ours are sort of saying they're interested in. So that's sort of where we've sort of focused at the moment.
Sorry, I just wonder, if I want to discover what's going on in my suburb, why can't I just use Google as a general search and find it out?
Yeah, I mean, like, what would you search for? So, like, what's going on around me in Bondi?
I usually search for something concrete. I don't want to know in general.
Yep.
I need new shoes. I'm searching new shoes or for.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with Google is firstly, it's all web-based, so you're not getting any of that social data. And the secondly thing is that there's no kind of real-time live element. So if you're in Bondi and you're searching for something to do, I'd be pretty surprised if the Kite Festival came up. If you're searching for bars, I'd be very surprised if Google said, hey, the bar across the road is busy and 2 of your friends are there. Google is brilliant at surfacing web-based content. They haven't been very good at surfacing social or socially relevant content. So, some parts of the consumer, a Yellow Pages or a Google Places search, finding the address and phone number of the local shoe shop is sufficient. Our view of the world is it's more powerful to show you what 3 people at that shoe shop are saying now, what they've bought, how many of your friends have been there, when it's busy, the fact that the latest pair of Nike shoes have just arrived and here's a photo of somebody trying them on. Like, for us, adding that richness to local is kind of where we see local evolving to. And you kind of see Google moving that direction now a little bit with Google Plus and Now. So I think even Google themselves are realising that there's a whole nother layer that they're missing out on, because they're just sort of pulling in web data, which inherently isn't very fresh. But, if searching for shoes works on Google, we're probably not going to be able to convince you to come over. If you are looking for things as they happen, I think we've got a pretty compelling technology that can do that.
So I was just wondering, so can roams be used to plan things in advance? So say with the Kite Festival example, if it's the week before and I'm going to be in Bondi at that time, does roams help with that?
That's a really, really good question, and it's something we talk about a lot in the office, and that's a really, really hard challenge to solve. And the reason being is, as soon as kind of an event starts, there's a lot of buzz and content around it that you can then pull to work out something's going on. It's very, very tricky to kind of work out in advance that something's going to happen. So you can kind of take events feeds to sort of know that a kite festival or a band is about to play, but it kind of ends there. The richness that we are kind of delivering is, as it happens, we're pulling in fresh content. So we're kind of trying to figure out how do we pair what we've got with that kind of planning element. So the first stage of doing that for us was we added a feature in the app with a little star to sort of mark a place that you might be interested in going in the future. So what happens there is, you see Luna Park, I want to check that out. I hit the star, put the phone back in my pocket, and next time you're within 500 metres, we ping you and say, hey, you wanted to check out Luna Park and you're near it now. So that's kind of the first step for us as a business, thinking about the future. But I mean, completely agree, that's a really big use case. Even like I'm going to New York next week, I can change my location on roams to see what's happening in New York now. And that's probably a good indication for some of the stuff that I want to do. But the other part of the equation is like what's going to happen there next week, so I can kind of plan it. And we've got some interesting ideas because like we see peaks and troughs in activity. So, if we can predict that certain bars are busy every Friday night from 6 to 9, we could say to you, hey, well, next Friday from 6 to 9, there's a good chance that this bar on Times Square is going to be, going off. So I think that's probably more the direction we'll go. But we're going to try a whole bunch of things and see what works.
And will, in the future, businesses then be promoting their events through roams as well? And would that be one way?
Yeah, so I mean that's the other part of the revenue model that we've got, and so that's what they're already doing. So probably less about promoting things in the future and more about creating demand now. So as an example, Dimmicks, had Danny Minogue rocking up to sign books at their George Street store. So they added a photo a couple of hours in advance. We promoted that at the top of the stream. we help them create buzz around that. I suppose it's an event, but it's also attached to their retail store and created buzz in the local area. Similarly, we're talking to an alcohol brand about a campaign they've got over the summer where they're doing some cool things in different bars and clubs. It's pretty tricky for them to sort of tell a local audience about that thing that's happening, so they're going to use us as a platform a few hours ahead of the event to sort of seed interest, and then during the event sort of help to amplify the buzz at that event.
So what are your different sources of data? I suppose I'm not asking you a trade secret or something.
No, it's not trade
It's
secret.
like, are you tying directly with the Google and Pinterest or those guys, or you are buying the data from some other third-party data feeders?
Yeah, so at the moment we're pulling in from Instagram, Facebook, Foursquare and Twitter. But we're interested in, we're going to implement a whole lot more. I mean, that was just sort of phase one for us. I mean, and that's a lot of data in itself to kind of deal with. There are sources that we could buy, there are sources that are free. We're really interested obviously in Google. We're interested in probably video as well. There's some really nice location video platforms now, like Vidi. So, at concerts that people from all over the concert are actually taking videos as well as taking photos. There's more data than we'll know what to do with.
So you're obviously using cloud platform to store data or something like that?
Well, yeah, and the thing is each of those services have different terms of service about what you can and can't do with their data. So that's also an equally tricky engineering challenge, because none of the third-party data is actually ours to store. Like in some cases you have to throw it away, some cases you have to cache it. So that's kind of tricky as well, complying with all of those requirements. But from the user's perspective, giving them a seamless experience, because they don't care what you're allowed to show, what you're not allowed to show, and there's different licensing requirements and attribution requirements. So from our perspective, we just want to provide a consistent UI for the consumer, but sort of also complying with all of the terms of service from those data sources.
At any time, do you feel that, are you reinventing the wheel to do this data processing stuff? Or any such single instance that you feel that you're reinventing the wheel?
Reinventing the wheel. I think we feel like that probably every day. We try and use technologies that are already being built if it exists. There aren't many technologies that allow you to suck in, source it from multiple data sets, clean them in real time, process them, work out which pieces of data go to which user. So, there's some natural language tools that we've pulled in. There's a whole bunch of different things where it's open source, we've been able to use it, but we've built a lot of it ourselves, just because of the nature of the beast that we've built. Beast probably doesn't sound right.
Maybe two more questions.
How long between the original vision that you had, sort of, as you said, walking out on the street with your son, trying to figure out what to do on Saturday?
Yeah.
How long between, that concept or that sort of fire inside to actually getting, early stage traction with the idea in terms of, investors or actually, starting it as a business?
Probably about 6 months, and that was probably quick based on the fact that I just exited my previous business. I'd already had people sort of phoning me saying, "Hey, what are you doing next?" And so I already had a bit of that traction. Probably without that, it would have been much, much harder. So I think the timing was kind of right as well. I'd been thinking about it for 6 months. I actually hadn't physically got my hands dirty and built it. I mean, we built some prototypes and done some designs, but nothing that would impress anybody. It was just the broad thinking about the strategy, the product. And like the vision kind of held all the way through, but the product changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
So and it still changes based on what people tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listener?
Yeah, you can both go. Okay, yeah. Cassandra?
I'm at the stage where I'm thinking about bringing on a staff member, and I've got to take that leap of faith. Did you notice a big growth in your business when you brought on somebody else, or did it?
Oh, I simply couldn't have. In like my case, I simply couldn't have done it on my own. Like we're in the position where what we've built is a pretty engineering intensive platform and business. So it would have taken me probably several hundred years to be able to do it myself.
Yeah.
So we needed to build a good team because I didn't have the skills. So we wanted to build the right people to put in each of those seats. But yeah, with my previous startup, I waited till we had enough traction to be able to sustain it. And kind of we always sort of paid for the growth out of the revenue of the business.
In terms of publicising the app, what's been the best bang for buck in terms of whether it's media or paid advertising or word of mouth? How have you got that going?
Look, we're still learning. It's really, really, really hard. It's a much harder problem than web even, because there's so many steps in the process to get somebody from knowing your brand to going to the app store, to remembering their password and downloading it, to installing it, to opening it, to using it, and then even hopefully signing up. There's so many places in that chain where you can lose people. It's a pretty tough problem to sort of solve. And then you add to that the fact there's about 1 million apps now on iPhone, and it like to get noticed is really tough. I'll be interested to see what happens on Wednesday when Apple launch their new discovery platform for apps. So that was built by an Australian, Ben Kieran, who went over to the US and built a business that got sold to Apple as well. That'll be interesting to see if that helps developers get noticed. So we've done a mixture of things, like nothing big media, like we haven't done TV ads. We've done we put up posters around Sydney and Melbourne, which had an amazing bang for the buck. Like we had gig style posters put up, and the number of people that texted me and pinged me that they saw it was amazing. We've tried some mobile advertising, which is a waste of time and money. The best thing for us has been PR. Talking to influencers, talking to bloggers, making friends with journalists, going overseas to trade events and ruthlessly stalking journalists to be able to pitch them. And most of the time they're pretty happy, they're looking for stories to write about, and if you pitch them in the right way, which you don't do the first 3 or 4 times, and then on the 5th time you get it right and you kind of stick to it.
Throw the Australian accent.
Just chuck in the Australian accent and the shrimp on the barbie and away you go. But yeah, we've had coverage in Mashable and TechCrunch and LA Times and Bloomberg and significant media outlets, which is the best free form of advertising because people are curious and they download the app and then actually try it. So that's been by far the best way for us to get sort of users. And they're good quality users because they're pre-qualified, they've read about it, they're interested, they download it and they try it. So it's not just putting a banner ad up and going, oh, we hope that person downloads it.
Okay, yeah, so we'll probably have to wrap it up there, but well, thank you for coming. So what the intention is probably to run this on a monthly basis to get people such as Jonathan in, but no less, it can be, we are trying to get investors on board to share their thoughts and experiences, I guess, as well, and particular politicians maybe that can give an insight into the the tech community that's happening in Sydney. But
there won't be many politicians that can give that insight.
I didn't want to say a name.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a name and I was like,
couldn't think of one. Yeah. Oh, Malcolm Turnbull maybe.
That's
yeah. There's not very many.
Yeah. But yeah. So this is, I guess, as you know, it's the first event. We are trying to do it on a monthly basis, but you are the first sort of inaugural attendees. So thank you for coming. But feel free to hang around till about 8 o'clock until we'll politely get, I guess, kicked out. But yeah, feel free to just chat in between.
Cool.
And then everyone,
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Thanks.